I would like to just give you a brief overview of the topics that we plan to cover, and also set a little bit of context for why we think this matters here at the Longview Foundation. For those of you in the DC area, I am hoping that, that you had a chance to just glance over the headlines of the Washington Post today. And social media becomes more and more important in our society, to the point that it's even making the pages of the Washington Post, where a staffer, I'm not going to say where from or anything like that, because we like to be bipartisan here at Longview, but somebody actually tweeted something and ended up losing their job over it, and it was in the Post today. So social media matters. You get jobs this way, you lose jobs this way, but at the same time, it's also a great teaching opportunity, and we want our educators to be able to bring the world into their classroom, not only through books and learning, but also through social media as well. And we've got a great group of panelists here to discuss this, but I just think it's very important when addressing these topics, we come as the attitude of learners, and we really do want to be hearing from you throughout the broadcast, so please use Twitter, and then we will continue to have the conversation. But before we get too far into things, I think we actually want to let you know how you can connect with all of us. The first being Asia Society in Longview, and then GTE, and the folks at Penn. So we've got the addresses up, and we've got the hashtag for this conversation that we hope to continue over time. Just to let you know, you are all muted, so in order to participate in the conversation, you'll need to go ahead and type your questions in or raise your hand, and when we get to the discussion area, we'll do our best to get your comments off of Twitter, get your questions off of Twitter, and to use the web chat functions as well as a part of the Citrix universe. So this is a very social media and technology savvy seminar that you're going to today. Another thing that I think it's worth mentioning and thinking about is what really drew you, what compelled you to participate in this webinar today. And so I think we're going to go ahead and throw up the first poll question and have you respond to what actually made you want to participate in this webinar. Do you come, we'll get to where you're from and other questions, what kind of media you're using. But if you want to go ahead and tweet your response to why you're participating today, that would be great. And then we'll go into introducing Caitlin in just a moment. So we'll give you a minute. And I'm going to pull up my Twitter and see what we've got. I see 2 tweets on. Maybe nobody uses Twitter, and maybe that's why you're here, because you want to see. Oh, yeah. Let's launch the poll. Can we do it on, we can also do it through non-social media ways. So we'll go to poll. And, oh, it's open. Okay. So we're going to let you answer this, and then I'm going to let Caitlin talk about the results in just a few minutes. Daniel and Melanie, you guys are the only ones tweeting besides Caitlin right now. So I think we've got some folks that may want to learn how to use social media a little more. We do have some folks that don't use Twitter. Good to know. Later on in the broadcast, we will see. Okay, so answers are coming in, and I'm seeing, Caitlin, do you want to unmute?
Absolutely. So that was really interesting. An interesting result to this, because we have a lot of folks here, some who are interested in learning about social media skills, only 10% who are interested in learning how to better connect over social media. But a vast majority, 77% of you, and most of you voted, so thank you very much, are here to learn how to connect on social media. So we really appreciate that you have given us that feedback, because I know it will help the three, my co-presenters and I, help to tailor our presentations a little bit, and we can, I know I'll certainly skip over more of the skill-based stuff and then think more about the resources to support internationalization.
Great, thank you. Okay, I'd like to actually introduce Caitlin to the audience. I know that we have pulled from all of our networks with regard to attendees today, and Caitlin is a great partner of the Longview Foundation. She is the Executive Director of Global Teacher Education. She is a two-time Peace Corps volunteer. She was in Uganda and Thailand. She's been a professor and taught classes in social media use at the University of Maryland. Global teacher education exists really to internationalize teacher preparation as a field and to provide resources and to provide an online community in order to do so. They are a great partner of Longview. We work very closely together, and it's really my joy to not only work with Caitlin, but also to conduct this work together that we do. Another great resource that I just want to mention before we get too far into the webinar is through our partners at Asia Society, who co-sponsor the Global Certificate Program with World Savvy. And as you're learning more about internationalizing teacher preparation and how to do more in your classrooms, that's another great resource that I just want to throw out there and let folks know that registration is open, and you can learn more about that at not Global Teacher Education, I'm sorry, but at asiasociety.org. But Global Teacher Education is a great resource, and we're proud to be partners with them. And without further ado, I'm going to hand things over to Caitlin and let her drive through her slides. So I'm going to change presenters, and then and then I will let Caitlin do some talking. Caitlin, go ahead.
All right, thank you, Jennifer. Thank you so much for your very nice introduction. And as Jennifer said, we are partners. We've worked together for some time, and I always appreciate the work that the Longview Foundation does in internationalizing teacher preparation. For those of you out there who are not familiar with Longview, they're one of the few foundations that identifies specifically internationalization of teacher education as one of their funding areas. So we always appreciate the work that they do as well. So I'm going to talk today a little bit about social media for internationalizing teacher education. But before I do that, what I'd like to do is I want to just learn a little bit more about you all and where you're coming from. So I'm going to go ahead and ask another poll question and ask you to talk or to share what role you play in education. Because again, as I think through this presentation and how we might use social media to internationalize teacher prep across the K-20 spectrum, it's really important for me to hear where you all are coming from. So we have had, we're having votes pouring in. It's fabulous. About 70% of you have voted, so I'll just give it another moment to hear from you all. Again, as we think through these things when we're planning these webinars, it's always interesting to think about where our audience is coming from, since we can't see you all or necessarily talk with you. All right, we're in at about 85%, so I'll go ahead and close the poll. Over half of you come from university and higher education. We do have some 19% of you are from the K-12, 17% from nonprofits like myself, and 18% from government, and 6% from others. So again, Web2Social T-Prep, please let us know where you're coming from if you're not from one of these identified groups. Excellent. Thank you so much for participating in that poll. All right, as we think about social media, today I'm going to talk a little bit about social media in general, though I won't spend a lot of time on that because, again, most folks did not identify that they're interested in learning social media skills. A bit about Global Teacher Education. We are a nonprofit organization. We support the internationalization of teacher preparation programs in the United States. We work, our major audience is faculty and deans in colleges of education or other university settings in the teacher preparation space. And I'll talk a little bit more about GTE a little bit later on. So before we get going, and again, you can always tweet to our hashtag, but what is the first thing that pops into your head when you hear the word social media? So I'll give you just a moment. Use our hashtag. What's something that pops into your head when you think about this word social media? I see a lot of people starting to tweet using our hashtag, which is fantastic, but no one is tweeting about what the first thing that pops into their head. So I will tell you, from my experience, what a lot of people tell me is it feels a little bit like a bandwagon. There's this little Twitter bird that's telling you, hey, jump on. do this thing called social media, but we don't necessarily know what it is or understand what it means. Oh, you'll have to excuse me. So can a few other people go ahead and tell me what they, what are some other things that they, what's the first thing that pops into your head when you think of social media? Interaction, learning by doing. What else? What are some other things? I do believe that interaction is a good one. That one's coming from Robert Baricelli. Thank you so much.
Corrine and Courtney think of Facebook.
Ah, yes, of course, Facebook. That's often a big one that comes up. I think that that tends to be sort of the end-all, be-all. What are some other responses that you're seeing, Jennifer?
Courtney says connectivity, and then other people say online communication. Nancy, who's an editor of an ag curriculum online. Staying connected is from Sarah. Instant responses, definitely. There is an instantaneousness to social media.
Absolutely. Oh, I apologize. Here we go. And again, thank you so much for your responses to that. I like that. Also, I saw that Jillian put public forum, and I also see that Jada has added that it is about connecting with others. Heather says sometimes it's purely social, and sometimes it's more for professional interaction. There are a lot of different ways, and I think Heather brought up a very good point about the interactivity piece. We use social media, it can be a little bit daunting and overwhelming at times. We use it for a lot of different purposes, and there are a lot of different platforms. I can't take credit for this graphic. My co-presenter, Daniel Foster, shared this with me. I appreciate that. And you can see that there is a source at the bottom. This graphic was developed in 2011. And in 2013, he updated it. And he actually updates it every year. I recommend looking at that website. And this tells me that not only does social media, do the platforms change and new platforms appear, but the way that we're using it changes almost all of the time. And it's interesting, the Facebook comment, as you can see, Facebook and Twitter are right there in the center of our graphic. So I'm going to just, to give us a foundation, talk about what we mean by social media. The best, or I wouldn't say the best, but the definition that really seems to make the most sense to me is this definition that I found in this Users of the World Unite publication. It's a group of internet applications that build on the technological foundations of Web 2.0, and they allow for the exchange and creation of user-generated content. So let's stop for a minute. And what is it that I mean by Web 2.0? Well, Web 1.0, for all of us out there who remember a decade or even and getting to be 2 decades ago, the internet used to be a static place, a place that you would go and read. It was text and pictures, and you would gain information. And you had to have a great deal of training in order to be able to be a person that could post this information onto the web. Fast forward to Web 2.0, and it's a social web where we're allowed to participate. It's not static, and the web can be changed by users without formal teaching. And it's important to note that it's not a change in the way technology is used, not a change in technology, excuse me, but a change in the way technology is used. And with user-generated content, this is content that is published publicly, where we are given platforms such as Twitter and Google Plus that allow us creative ways to share information. This is not reposting, and it's not for a commercial entity. That's why we call it user-generated. And again, feel free to add any other thoughts about how you define social media. All right, now moving on into the social media meets internationalization, using this concept of user-generated content and thinking about engagement and sharing resources, which seems to be of major interest to the folks out there today. So when I talk about user-generated content from an internationalization perspective, I say let's get to work. Global education can feel really isolating, but it doesn't have to be. And if you don't feel isolated, if you feel well supported on your campus, 50% of you come from higher education, or at your school, then it's time to reach out to others who may not feel the same support, or who are trying to get started in this realm. We need to share what we're doing, find connections. Types of content, and I have listed all of these, and please again, Feel free to share any other types of content as users, as we're generating content around internationalization that you would like to see others sharing. I've put up a couple of ideas here, but one thing that makes, again, this idea of social media really salient and important is that you can start to share information in the less formal space. In higher education, we tend to have very formal publications, which is important to the work that we do, but why not share some of the work that you're doing informally through a blog? And my co-presenters today are very good at encouraging not only their students to do it, but also doing it themselves. All right, now I want to talk a little bit about how we engage. So I'm going to share an example of two platforms that I use at Global Teacher Education and how we might better connect and engage and find some resources from each other. So here I have the Asia Society Partnership for Global Learning, as Jennifer mentioned, our great partner who has provided this, this webinar platform as an in-kind donation. And they're an organization that I know and respect, and so obviously I follow them on Twitter. So finding relevant users is an important first step. But another thing that you might think about is, as a Twitter user yourself, creating a list. And you can see I've put an arrow there. You can find the list, or you can go to these organizations and participate and subscribe to their list. So if you go on, you can see that there is a button where you can subscribe. But the nice thing about that is you can also see how many members are in the group, and then it acts essentially as a filter of a way for you to find the information that you're looking for. And of course, in terms of resources, we have to talk about those hashtags. I find general hashtags that are very effective. I've listed just some general ones. Again, you'll have to do a little further filtering or use multiple hashtags. I've offered some more specific hashtags that we use pretty frequently, as do the people that we follow closely. Again, please share those hashtags. Also try creating a content specific or your own looking for or creating a content specific hashtag. We created a hashtag for this webinar. There's no reason why you can't create them. And actually, I just noticed that Craig Perrier had been tweeting a little bit earlier about the possibility, how social media presents a possibility. I just published a piece, a blog by him last week on GCE, and found this History Ed chat to communicate to folks who might be interested in that blog. So it's always amazing where you'll find these hashtags or create them. Also, you can think about a mission-driven hashtag. We tweet a lot with Global Competence because our mission is to develop the next generation of globally competent educators. Some resources on LinkedIn. Again, I'm not going to spend too much time, but some things I found interesting, some recent developments in LinkedIn, is that you can type in interests on your profile and click on, it then creates a link. And if you click on that link, for example, this is from mine. If I click on global education, I can find other people who've identified that as an interest. I searched internationalization of teacher education yesterday and came up with 382 hits, and a significant number of them I'd never met before. You can also highlight your organizations, follow companies of interest. If you go to LinkedIn's main page and you go to the very bottom where it says companies you may want to follow and click see more, you can create a lot of filters and find companies of interest. And also there are the relevant groups. One group that I would like to recommend is Preparing Globally Competent Teachers. You have to request to become a part of it, but we have a lot of great discussions on that group that would be relevant, and we also share a lot of digital and other resources. I would, of course, excuse me, that I went a little too quick. I of course have to mention Global Teacher Education. So in addition to being a free open source resource with articles where we share practices, examples, references, reports, anything in the internationalization of teacher prep space, we also have our interactive features. And I've pulled this directly from our Connect page, and I provided the URL at the top of the page. You do have to register for them, but we have discussion forums, blogs where you can comment, a member directory where you can filter members by interest area or geographical location, a job board, and an events page. And you're welcome to post events or to search for events. If you look at our member directory, there's my member profile. You can see where I'm located in my interest area. Also, you can click on that little green envelope and send me a message. We also have the capability for our users to share resources. And again, if you're interested, go to that Connect page and you can learn more about that. I'm not going to go through these rules of thumb very much because I do feel like most of you out there have a good understanding of social media. The only thing I will share is just to give a little shout out to making graphics. I'm not a very artistic or creative person, but using something like Pictochart or PicMonkey, I've been able to create some really fun graphics. And I pulled up one that I sent in September. I had tweeted out a book review that I'd recently published and was able to get more than my 140 characters because I pulled that quote and created a fun little graphic, and it took me less than 5 minutes. So that really does give you another opportunity to engage a little bit more. I have to, and then also just to add one last little piece, that participation does not always necessarily mean engagement. And in the words of Jason Harshman, who is a faculty member at the University of Iowa, who worked as an intern for GTE while he was a doc student at Ohio State University, he says, and I have to quote him here because these are not my words, to be content creators, not just consumers, and encourage your students to do the same. And I think that that's true. Let's start again. It's back to that user-generated content question. All right, the resources, which seem to be the area that most people were interested in learning more about. And I just saw a tweet from Felicia about she's excited to join the group, the Preparing Globally Competent Teachers group, and I'm really glad to see that. And I hope more of you will join. Great discussions and great resources to share there. So one resource I would recommend is the Global Education Conference. I've included the Twitter handles for all of these resources. This is a week-long, 24/7 international conference, totally online and completely free. The network has grown to over, I think it's in the tens of thousands of people. Unfortunately, it was 2 weeks ago, so definitely go to the page and join the network and think about participating in the conference next year. It's really a lot of fun and a great way to connect with web savvy and social media savvy folks. Edutopia. Excellent pages and pages. Search social media on Edutopia about incorporating social media into learning spaces through K-20 Spectrum, responsible use policies, and also addressing student engagement. I also recommend Nonprofit Tech for Good. It's focused at nonprofits, and I do see that there are some folks out there who said that they were coming from nonprofits. Heather Mansfield, who runs the website and all of their social media, has some great how-to blogs and articles that you can apply to a higher education setting. She also does a free webinar series. I believe she has one coming up tomorrow. The last is look to social media management platforms like Hootsuite or TweetDeck. I just got an email from Hootsuite this morning offering me free social media training if I signed up for Pro for free for a 60-day trial. So those are generally a good place to look for some training, but also some ideas about engagement. And what else? What are some other resources that people out that you all like there would like to share that you think that you would like to share? Oh, okay, I had a question coming in from Craig Perrier, who I mentioned earlier. He asked, what is PicMonkey like? Is it free and dynamic? Craig, to answer your question, yes, it's free. You can pay for an upgrade and get more bells and whistles, but I've never paid for the upgrade and found that it works just perfectly. And it's a graphic creation software, essentially, where you can upload and put filters and do all kinds of fun things, or just type in quotes. And you can also optimize them. You can make Facebook optimized graphics, Twitter optimized graphics. It's great. And any other resources that folks would like to share? And we can maybe talk about these a little bit later during our question and answer. But for now, I will turn it back to Jennifer. Jennifer?
That sounds great. Thanks, Caitlin. It's good to hear about what's going on. And also, I think as much as we can share resources, that's one of the great things about webinars like this. And the fact that this will be recorded, as well as I understand from Lisa Swayhoover that all of the sessions for the Global Conference on Education were recorded and available probably on their website. So there's another great resource if you want to do some further research there. So we wanted to know what kind of social media you all are using and understand a little bit better about what's really active and out there. I'm kind of shocked that Caitlin hasn't yet said that I'm not on Facebook. I'm not on Facebook.
Jennifer's not on Facebook, everyone.
But I am also a Twitter a reluctant Twitterer, although I've grown to appreciate it, and I also am pretty active on LinkedIn. So we wanted to know what everybody is up to, and we're going to launch a poll so that you all can see what everybody's up to. And I think I'm going to let Caitlin launch that poll while I go ahead and introduce Daniel. Before Daniel starts talking, we'll share the poll results. But Daniel D. Foster is an assistant professor of ag and extension education at Penn State University. He provides leadership in the ag teacher prep program at Penn State and is also an avid reader. He is currently reading The Genius Hour, which is a follow-up to Pure Genius, or the other way around. Also, what's not in his official bio is that Daniel is a seventh-generation Texan, and now he's living in Pennsylvania, where they had a snowstorm over Thanksgiving. I wonder what that was like. Well, I can see that some of you are active on Twitter like me, and lots of you are also on LinkedIn. Few are on Facebook, so I'm not the only one. And some folks blog and Instagram, and we're going to give you just maybe another 10 seconds to answer if you haven't yet answered. Nobody's on Instagram. It came up while we were prepping for this webinar. What I heard from what Caitlin shared with us already is that that it takes work to be engaged in social media in a meaningful way that's really contributing to your career. And I think that that's absolutely true. But I think in instances like global teacher education, like LinkedIn, that initial investment can pay off in spades, even Twitter, although it's a lot easier to get started in Twitter, to be smart about who you follow and to really get content that's meaningful to your work can take a little bit more of a time investment. But it's almost like I'm curating my own news site with Twitter now that I kind of love. But so we don't have anybody on Instagram?
No, we don't have a single Instagram user, and it's interesting because we did debate yesterday about which social media platforms we might add, and Melanie offered an interesting perspective as well yesterday in talking about the social media platforms that her new incoming students are using, and they're changing all the time, and not all of them appropriate necessarily to professional spaces and places. And so it is interesting. 43% on Twitter, 30% on LinkedIn, and we do have 19% on Facebook. So please, again, using our hashtag, tell us a little bit about strategies that you have for using Facebook professionally, because I find it has a few quirks about it that makes it difficult to use professionally. So please do share some of those. Jada did say that she does use Instagram, but not as she uses it more personally than professionally. Also, there was another recommendation for Canva, which is another resource for a picture creator like PicMonkey, and that's coming from Robert. Also, Craig has recommended Screencast-O-Matic. And if you visit his new resource, the Globalizing U.S. History, he's got a great screencast that he shares there. So it can give you an example of how to use that. And then LJ has shared a Twitter weekly analysis report as a good resource. And then LJ has also commented that her students use Instagram. Okay, great. Thanks so much for participating in that poll.
Okay, and then the other half of my introduction is, of course, for Melanie Foster, who is also at Penn State, who is also a reader, and who comes from the opposite side of the center of the country in that she is a North Dakotan. She has a passion for helping students and instructors and programs tell their story about global impact. She takes kids in the ag programs at Penn State around the world. She just got back from Costa Rica. And she is reading Americana right now, which is definitely a global perspectives book. But I'm going to go ahead and turn my screen over to Melanie and Daniel and let them tell us a little bit more in depth about how social media can be used in teacher preparation programs, specifically for ag, but with applications to lots of other places. So Daniel, I am passing you my screen. And hopefully you guys are unmuted and we can go ahead and you can keep putting in questions, and I would be delighted to curate them either through the Twitter hashtag or through the question box on the webinar site. Okay, thanks everybody.
Just a moment, Daniel, are you unmuted?
Well, thank you so much for having us. Oh, go ahead.
All right, we can hear you
Caitlin's all
perfectly.
you. What
Sorry,
do you
go
need?
right ahead.
Okay, are we good to go?
Yep,
I think
perfect.
so. Go ahead, Daniel.
Oh, excellent. Well, I have to sometimes hold in my excitement. Um, it's always fun to gather on audiences and share about passions that you have and you share with them. And so we get to talk today, Melanie and I, and we're just blessed to be in front of you. We have these 20-minute learning goals, and we're watching the clock closely to make sure that we value and respect everyone's times. But to describe pragmatic approaches for engaging teacher education stakeholders with social media. And then we're going to talk about identifying interventions to develop global competency through the application of those teacher candidates, digital literacy skills, and how we feel they go hand in hand. I feel very blessed in my life to have the chance to share a passion about making a difference in the lives of students through teacher education and through school-based agriculture education. And I get to do that in my current position with my wife. And so that's just really freaking awesome and fun. Uh, I am not as talented as Caitlin. I will not be able to probably respond on Twitter while I'm talking. That multitask thing doesn't always work, but I'll do the best I can to keep an eye on it as we go. See, this is an example of what I know is that in 20 minutes, I'm just going to scratch the surface of our excitement of where we can be. And so what I'm hoping is that maybe you'll follow us on Twitter and we'll follow you back and we'll engage as partners and continue conversations and potential opportunities for synergy in the future. Beyond this 20-minute segment that we're held to. I also would ask the question that was fun when we talk about what platforms are we on. I would flip that and ask the question, does it matter for our purposes what platforms we are currently on, or does it matter on what platforms our stakeholders are on, our students, the people we wish to engage as partners in our mission of making the world a better place through quality education? Well, Melanie's going to start off with something that's really important to us about why is agriculture here talking about global. Melanie?
Yeah, so I just wanted to give a little bit of background about our particular discipline, agriculture. Is agriculture local or global? I think that we tend to really think about agriculture as in local terms because the growth of crops and production of animals depends so much on the local conditions. But there's a global agriculture industry that has a global impact. I challenge all of you to think about something maybe that you ate for lunch that came from a different country or a different continent. So there is a huge need to turn our focus to the global agriculture industry. Next slide, Daniel.
Sure. I love the fact that those are papayas and then those cool pictures. Aren't those oxen from Costa Rica? I love the
Yes.
stories of the pictures. I'm sorry.
So I pulled up a few interesting social media news stories from around the world. I love the first one from the BBC. They just reported last month that nomads in northern China are now relying on social media to solve problems such as find missing cattle or to sell their livestock for higher prices. And so for those of you that aren't familiar with the logistics of being a nomad, your cattle or your livestock are not going to be in a fence, and so they might be able to get away from you. And so social media is really solving a problem here by helping these nomads connect with other people in the local area and find their cattle. So I thought that was a neat example. Another one that we're very proud of here at Penn State is the development of a new app called Plant Village. And Plant Village, the main idea is to democratize science-based knowledge, but one interesting feature of this app is that it actually allows people with smartphones anywhere in the world to take a picture of a problem that they're having with a crop. Maybe it's a disease, or maybe it is a pest that's somehow infecting the crop, or maybe just the rabbits are getting in, and so they can share their problem worldwide, and anybody in the world can answer that question. And so I think that's a really neat application. So we see that people around the world in agriculture are finding social media a useful tool. Shouldn't we? the biggest hurdle that we have here is that social media and all that global stuff are seen as just extras. And we know that both global learning and the use of social media are not just extras. Next slide, Daniel. So global learning and social media are not just add-ons. They can be integrated into our class design to facilitate significant learning. Next slide, Daniel. So this is the part where I'm sure everyone's rolling their eyes and starting to take a nap because I'm going to talk about theory for a few minutes. But there are really two main reasons why talking about theory is really important. First of all, it moves us beyond anecdotal evidence that social media facilitates global learning. And second of all, there's a stigma around social media that is just fun and flashy. So I really like this taxonomy of significant learning to help demonstrate the meaningful ways that social media and global learning can be integrated. So
I would point out that's a QR code that will take you directly to that self-directed guide for designing courses that Melanie has found, and we've discovered and worked with other colleagues as they look at globalizing your curriculum. So feel free to point your phone to that QR code if you would like.
right, and so that QR code is going to take you right to that document that is cited at the bottom, the Self-Directed Guide to Designing Courses for Significant Learning. And it's a pretty big packet from Fink, who walks you actually through a 12-step program for designing a course with significant global learning goals. And so the idea behind Fink's taxonomy here is that teaching involves two main activities. First, course design, and second, teacher-student interaction. And so there are 6 subcategories of this significant learning. So I invite you to take a look at these 6 subcategories. The integration, can you go back? Integration of ideas, people, realms of life, the application of skills, understanding and remembering information, learning how to learn, caring about others, and learning about yourself. Those are all subcategories of significant learning, which I argue that social media can facilitate learning in each of these. Go ahead, Daniel. So each kind of learning is interactive. And so by that I mean each kind of learning can stimulate other kinds of learning. And so it's the interaction of these different subcategories that leads to significant learning, which I think is an important foundation for global learning and the development of global competency. And so, of course, the other benefit here is the development of social media competence. And it can facilitate all of these things: leadership skills across time zones and borders, the ability to think creatively, communicate effectively, and just that open-mindedness to embrace new technologies. And so by understanding social media, you can see how it can be applied to solve your problems. Personally, for me as a faculty member at Penn State, one of my main problems is that I don't have a huge teaching budget. And I really like the aspect of social media that students can access it for free. And so here I have right at my fingertips a really dynamic teaching tool that all students can access at no cost. So for that, it really does solve a problem for me. So now I'm going to turn it over to Daniel to share some of the more fun stuff.
Yeah, see, you can tell we had these arguments, right? Preparing, you're going to get to talk to, over 50 awesome people from across the nation about what we do and who's going to get the fun stuff. I think that we're both talking about fun stuff. Our big technology tip for the day, you need to understand this. We are not techies first. We are not, that's not where we come from. We're teachers first. How you integrate technology, regardless of what type of technology. Remember, the chalkboard at one time was new technology. How you integrate technology should be based on content, pedagogy, and planning. It's not the tool or platform that matters. Teaching comes first. Technology simply allows us to perhaps to do things more efficiently or more dynamically or engage more partners to make it more real and contextually relevant for our students. At least I think that that's my observations of how social media has impacted the development of the teacher candidates that we want to prepare, that are prepared to teach students anywhere in the world. So our first goal, if you will, was describing the pragmatic approaches for engaging teacher education stakeholders with social media. Whoa, who, what, I mean, who are the stakeholders that we're talking about? And I'd hope to have an open chat. Sometimes our platforms limit to what we can interact. We can try to tweet. If you would like to share, I'm going to give a moment and actually just pause and say, if you wouldn't mind, please tweet. I'm going to give 15 seconds. I have a stopwatch, people, because I know I talk too much. I'm going to give you 15 seconds. Who do you consider to be a stakeholder in your mission as we talk about teacher education? Go. Well, guess what? 15 seconds have passed. That was so difficult. They told me 20 minutes. I said, you realize I'm a high school teacher that's programmed for 48 minutes, correct? Anyway, um, I'm waiting for some of those tweets to come up, and as we go through, we talk about stakeholders in teacher education, and I think about who we think of our stakeholders at Penn State. We're really talking about, first and foremost, our teacher candidates. They're a primary stakeholder. And then we start talking about, maybe we're going to be looking at those schools that will employ our students. Maybe the parents of the children that our student teacher candidates will teach. Agricultural education is a part of career and technical education. Therefore, we're very closely affiliated and aligned with the needs of business and industry, and they become very much engaged consumers and stakeholders in our teacher education program. So what are some ways, or what are 3 reasons that I as a faculty member use social media, like one faculty member's perspective? I believe that I'm achieving some of those significant learning goals from Fink, but I tried to break this down to like, okay, Daniel, get away from the academic piece, get away from the literature, just say, why are you doing it? Number 1, to create connected educators and digital advocates for agriculture education, because this is what I know, that unfortunately on this call right now, that there are many of you that didn't even know they teach agriculture in high schools, and they do. And I believe it's the premier delivery system in education today, and that makes me excited and fires me up, that we can teach applied STEM and inquiry-based instruction over relevant issues that, think about it, transcend most of the issues that we read about in the paper on the front page any day in food, fiber, and natural resources, and definitely transcend any artificial political or geographic border, because around the world we care about 3 meals a day if we're lucky and the clothes on our back. And so those contextual inquiry-based opportunities to teach applied STEM through agriculture education that's combined with individual students working in their unique work-based learning environments that we call supervised ag experience, at the same time developing the total student in our leadership laboratory of a student organization that's the only intercurricular student organization that exists, called FFA. And when all 3 of these come together and students can participate in them, we have success, total student success. But see, people don't know that ag education exists, and social media allows me to empower my teacher candidates to go into schools and communities in different countries and share what they're doing on a daily basis, to realize it's not just the farming kids down in that program, to say, oh my gosh, you do service learning over here, to say, wow, you're teaching that, because they're sharing student successes and engaging in other partners. So I need to create those digital advocates for agriculture education. It's one of the reasons why I'm so excited to do something like this webinar for this audience. Number 2, to engage in extended learning platforms. I'm going to save some time on this one and not go as deep, because I told you at the beginning, I never have enough time. But I can continue conversations and answer those questions for students when they come up immediately, because I'm a nerd. When they post them on Twitter, and I know that they're engaging in the content after they leave my room, and that just makes me happy, because they're starting to see that it's not about a class, it's not about a grade, it's about a profession. And perhaps most importantly of all, to develop a true community of learners. Because Caitlin mentioned the isolation that sometimes we're involved in global education and higher education. Well, guys, oftentimes it appears that agriculture education, you might be the only agriculture teacher in your school district. And so therefore that opportunity for isolation exists even more so. And so how can I break that down and let them know that there is a community out there that supports them? So specific examples from @TeachAgPSU, and I do hope that you follow our program on Twitter. We engage stakeholders, specifically sponsors, teachers, programs, professional organizations, future teachers. We use this as a recruitment platform. Basically, I would view my partnership and connection of Caitlin and Global Teacher Education as sourcing out almost from Twitter, and was able to have them come in and work with us, and that's exciting. From the Association of Career and Technical Education to the National Association of Ag Teachers, I find I don't mandate anything. It's just funny how you develop a culture. Caitlin tweeted out earlier, and I did as well, a great article from Edutopia about creating a school culture that's Twitter friendly. We kind of create that culture here to where you want to be involved. And so my cooperating teachers, and any of those who work in teacher education, you know that your cooperating teacher is your affiliate faculty member that's so important, has such a vital, influential role, and perhaps you have the least influence over at times on what they do, but they're jumping on it because they want to engage as well, and that's fun. So that programmatic emphasis of that culture is really that second example. So classes, and this is kind of fun because you guys, if you're on Twitter watching, you can type any of these hashtags in and see what pops up, and you'll see good, bad, or ugly what we're doing right now as we create the opportunity for design thinking of curiosity, critical thinking, and inquiry to what's occurring in our teacher preparation program. So AgEd 412 is my methods of teaching class. See what they're all about. AgEd 400 is a class that Melanie teaches called Global Agriculture Education. AgEd 311 is our youth leadership development course, and you can see the guest speakers they bring in, the partners, and how they work. Every course has a blog as well. I gave you one link there. You can see the nomenclature process that we use. Every class has that blog that we go through. And then I embed that Twitter feed into the blog so that a kid who doesn't want to be on Twitter, and yes, I do run into those at Penn State, they can still engage and follow along and see what's being said. Because it's embedded as a widget into the blog. What I've observed is I've had many students who sit down with me in the first week of class and say, I just don't want to do Twitter. And I say, no problem, it's not required. It's not mandated. It's just another way for me to communicate effectively and allow you to engage in the material. Usually about 4 weeks in, I see that they've created a Twitter account because they want to engage. They want to share their thoughts and opinions and what they have. That learning cohorts, every cohort group, to let you know kind of scope of where I am on teacher education, PSU, we produce anywhere from 15 to 25 agri-science teachers on an annual basis. Honestly, guys, we're probably top, I just did this research because on another project, top 10, if not top 5 in the nation. So you're not producing a lot, so it's really important that they identify strongly, and that's that PSU AgEd 15. And so every cohort, you know, you can see 14, you can see 13, and I even, as quickly as possible, I try to get them to identify that and share things. And so during their student teaching internships, they'll share experiences with that hashtag throughout the weeks. They also share, like when all of them go separate directions on different study abroad or global experiences and are learning different things because they're in different countries across the world, sometimes with Melanie, sometimes with other people. They're all sharing. They're all sharing to that one learning cohort and contributing to, if you will, a rising tide lifts all boats. Our co-curricular student organization, the Teach Ag Society, and other experiences that we have, I call them significant experiences, each one of those we create a hashtag for. So Teach Ag DSA 14, that's domestic study away, and we went and engaged in service learning in Colorado. That's a great one. Plug that hashtag in. You'll be, just look at it. It's awesome when you see students micro-reflecting and engaging. The Global Learning and Ag Conference, AgEd to Korea, and you can tell I'm running out of time because I don't get to tell you about all the fun things, and Teach Ag Genius, which Caitlin engaged with us, but I told my students I wanted them to fly their freak flag. I wanted them to be passionate about something, and so they had to come in and do a presentation, a Genius Hour, lightning talk, if you will, and then engage partners and talk with this hashtag across time. 2 books I recommended, Pure Genius by Wetrick 2014, and Inquiry and Innovation in the Classroom by Juliana 2015. Awesome. as we start creating an opportunity for our students to show their passions. And do we have a way to make it easy for them to share pictures? Like that's what we create a Flickr account. I share that password. They can all upload and ship them around. I'm still new to Instagram, but that question's out there. It doesn't matter where I'm comfortable. I need to be where my students are at. And that's really what pushes us. And just like Caitlin, Hootsuite. So right now, Melanie said, if you share all that, people are going to say, how do you do the rest of your job? And so you have to share this. I don't do it all. We have a very awesome program that I call our Teach Ag Avengers. We engage students to be the voice and the face of our program, to learn the digital literacy skills, to represent something more than themselves, and how to engage others so they can do that as teachers. So these Teach Ag Avengers, each of them is assigned a different platform, and they have to work together for cross-posting to different platforms and to sharing. So I have one student teacher candidate, and they're usually juniors, to be honest, not seniors, because I work them too hard as seniors, that their job is the Teach Ag PSU Pinterest board. I do not understand Pinterest, but I'm going to tell you, they love it. And I used to say that girls love it. I'm going to tell you something. A lot of my ag mechanics teachers love it because they share specific projects. I don't know, it's exciting. So each one of those platforms has a different student assigned to it, and they help make that happen. Now, our second goal is, so we talked about those pragmatic interventions. Our second goal in the 20 minutes that I took too much time in was to develop global competency to the application of those digital literacy skills. What assignments, what did we challenge our students with that we felt that by doing this, we're also growing global competency? And Melanie's going to share about that.
Right. So some of the goals that we try to accomplish go back to the Fink Taxonomy for significant learning. We're trying to give students, well, I didn't mean literally, Daniel.
When you talk, I listen.
I thank you for that. But we're asking students to keep an open mind, try something new, encourage their creativity, reflect on their experience. And, you know, something that we find really interesting with Twitter is they really have to boil it down to the main idea and figure out how to communicate that in 140 characters. And really, for many of them, that's a difficult task and requires quite a bit of thinking. We also want to capture thoughts in real time, and I'm going to talk about that more in a minute. And of course, we want to share learning with stakeholders. And so I just wanted to share with you actually a very recent example from last week. I took a cohort of first-year students, first-year university students, to Belize, and we spent Thanksgiving break there. And so we did, as a class, decide to engage in social media, and the first topic that came up for them as first-year students is, well, what are the rules for communicating with professors over social media? And so that really opened the door to kind of the same topics that we're talking about over here on Twitter. What does social really mean? Does it mean just your personal social networks? Aren't there also professional social networks? So it did open the door for us to have that conversation about using social media in a more professional context, but also to remind students that you know, when you put something out there, that lots of people can see it, including maybe professors and also maybe future employers. So it's a really great conversation to have in their first semester and their first year. But what we were doing in Belize were really doing micro-reflections in real time. And so students would hear a quote or you know, see something that related to one of their interests, and they would maybe snap a picture and tweet it out. And it's amazing because in a single day in Belize, we would encounter so many different people that had really great things to share with us, so many things we could learn from. But by the time that we even sat down to write in our journals in the evening or to have our group reflections, we forgot half of what we heard. So having students record these things in real time was amazing. And so what they will do then is they will actually create a learning artifact that they can share with stakeholders through the Storify application. So I encourage everybody to check out Storify as a way to save some of these social media reflections and create a larger document, and that way you don't lose any of those great reflections.
I will throw in one thing here. As a teacher educator, I'm so blown away by the power of global experiences for my teacher candidates when they go on them. However, I'm frustrated because they cost money, and I know that I will never have, at least currently, 100% of those candidates have those experiences. The social media piece allows my candidates in that learning community to live vicariously through their friends on these interactions or through people loosely related to them. So these students in Belize perhaps weren't at the point of teacher candidates, but they're sharing cool things that my kids are picking up, saying, hey, how can we go to Belize? How can we go work with Mopan Tech for our student teaching internships? They're doing ag ed, and you're like, yes, ag ed occurs across the world, and it's because of those vicarious experiences. Sorry, Melanie.
No problem.
Can I also jump in real quick and say that it's another way to cultivate the case for donor intent and to steer donors to care, because when you've got all of this great data coming in from students about these real-time experiences and you've got a log of that, it's a way for you to pull that information in when you're looking to grow a program like the AG program at PSU. That requires donor support, and what better way to engage donors than having them have access to some of these great statements by the kids.
Absolutely. I actually was able to save a program by having the students share everything from YouTube videos to tweets to Facebook posts. And, you know, our administrator said, okay, we get it. It's a great experience. We won't put it on the chopping block. Daniel, are you going to talk about Ag Ed to Korea?
I'm going to be quick because I think we're over time. Guys, we went in there, and thanks to USD, a Fulbright Hayes grant, we took awesome teacher candidates. We took current agri-science teachers, and we had them work together with their counterparts in South Korea, students in South Korea at Seoul National University who also want to be agricultural teachers. So we had a contextually relevant experience while they were still having the mind-blowing East meets West experience. So powerful, truly letting global competence grow in a different way, because they could see and say, wow, you want to be an ag teacher just like me, and you're going to teach high school kids just like me, but everything else is different, including the type of agriculture. Very powerful, 1 month. But while we were there, in order to promote that meaningful reflection, and some of you are very familiar with Kolb's experiential education model and with Dewey, and some of the things we talk about, that is learning really real if we don't think and reflect on it, we empower these young people to share multiple platforms about what's happening, and also hopefully we tried to drop a pebble and create ripples across U.S. school-based ag education of those who couldn't be there, which I know is now becoming a redundant theme that I'm sharing. We utilized Adobe Connect because, hey, I had teachers from Connecticut, Southern Pennsylvania, because they had full-time jobs, right? They couldn't all come up to State College, and Florida participating in this experience with my 8 teacher candidates who were, all, of course, all face-to-face on campus, and I could hurdle them into a room and, you know, teach them up. Well, now I could have those join me, and we did 10 class sessions in preparation for our month-long experience with Adobe Connect, with everybody being able to connect. Everybody had Twitter. We had the Ag Ed to Korea Twitter hashtag. Check it out. Amazing stuff. We created our own blog that I'll tweet out here shortly, or I'll have Melanie tweet while I'm talking, that was just for the experience. And then we sent that blog to all the critical stakeholders, the principals who allowed that teacher to go, the future cooperating teachers. Quite frankly, as I looked on the call, I have some friends from different stakeholder groups in ag education across the nation that they got bombarded somewhat, perhaps, throughout that month with a weekly email that left new blog posts. We worked in a community of practice. We shared great YouTube videos. The Flickr account, my friend and colleague and Florida. Kirby Barrick laughs because he's on Foster. There's 3,000 photos from Korea. I'm like, I know, isn't it awesome? Because then we gave it to those students and those teachers that when they're presenting to the school boards or when they're teaching a unit in their class now about their Asia experiences and what they saw, we're allowing them to tap into, maybe they were so into that moment they didn't get a picture, but one of the other 24 people in the group did, so we're sharing and collaborating. And of course we shared via Facebook. This led to our Global Learning and Ag Conference, GLAG 14. Melanie?
Sure. So just about a month ago, we had a Global Learning and Agriculture Conference. And again, what we were really facilitating was in-the-moment learning and, of course, the digital archive through Storify. But really, the purpose of this was for continued and expanded conversations. And for many of our students, this was the first time that they had been to a conference with a strong back-channel conversation. So we really enjoyed the idea that they were surprised that we wanted them to have their phones out. We wanted them to be typing away maybe a poignant quote that from one of the presenters. So that was not only fun, but it was a way for them to professionally network with peers and professionals that were interested in the same topic. And also, it provided a way for us to follow up with conference participants. We're still tweeting under GLAG 14, different resources that people are discovering, and the conversation is continuing.
And, you know, on that, the vision of GLAG 14, guys, is really what we're all coming together about, which is it's not just what are we doing at post-secondary. It's not just what are we doing at secondary. It's how can we work as a discipline for a continuum of development in agriculture education K through 20 of developing the global capacity of our students. Two questions I want to answer that came out of Twitter. I'm going to do it verbally to make sure I get in there. Number one, Shane from the National FFA organization asked about, whoa, what about cost of data? Hello, how are we doing all this social media stuff? What we need to know in South Korea, quite frankly, they have awesome tech and wireless. And so we did not do anything on data. In fact, Melanie and I shut our phones off except for the emergency phone for risk and liability from Penn State. Y'all know that. And we did everything via Wi-Fi or wireless networks. And what my kids had to learn, in America, they're used to like free Wi-Fi everywhere, but the fastest Wi-Fi in the world exists in Seoul, Korea, but you have to buy it. It's not much, but they didn't know that till the end, and then they were kind of bummed out. The next question I saw in here, Daniel, did the folks in the Korea trip communicate with the Korean peers in Korean? Jackie, that was a beautiful part of the Fulbright-Hays program, is there is a language requirement, but it was a language requirement that I'm so glad was there. We spent 20 hours the first week there in intense Korean language instruction. I got to tell you something, folks. I can pretty much say "안녕하세요," and that's about this it. 20 hours isn't going to get her done when we're picking up a new language. But I'm going to tell you what did happen as a teacher educator. Empathy. Empathy for English language learners. And when my teacher candidates on that experience has a student walk into their room that English is not their first language, I promise you they're going to have a different level of understanding. So, you know, big picture, we had these 4 outcomes that we look at when, as partners, Melanie in global learning and education, working in our Office of International Programs, her PhD is actually in rural sociology. It's fun to bring different disciplines together and find synergy. And to myself, who's truly myopically driven by teacher education and making the best teachers in the world, we found that we had 4 outcomes as we looked at globalizing and using this tool, social media, new competencies, an inspiration to engage that others care to, a repository of artifacts, and remember that community of learning, that professional network. We can continue to work together going forward. So I know that we've gone over time. I'm not going to get off the call until they kick me off. I'm going to answer questions and stay and talk to you as long as you wish. I appreciate your patience and engagement. I hope that we can continue to engage as synergistic partners in the online Twitterverse. So Caitlin and Jennifer, thank you so much for allowing Melanie and I to share some of our passions about Penn State Teach Ag.
Thanks so much, Daniel and Melanie. That was amazing, and I wish that we had another hour. And the fact that everybody's hanging on the call still or on the webinar still, I think, speaks to how important and how well you just presented all of that information. I have encouraged folks to put questions in on the function for the webinar, and you can also use the Twitter hashtag as well. I'm gonna let Caitlin manage the Twitter questions. One that came up from Felicia is around CAPE standards and what any CAPE standards might be for social media. And I actually did a quick search while you were chatting and didn't come up with anything specifically, but it was a really fast Google search on my phone. So I'm wondering if anybody else knows if CAPE standards are present and important and specific in any way, shape, or form, because I am not aware of them, but that just might be me and not you all. So tell me, CAPE standards, does anyone know the answer to that? Go ahead and type in an answer in the question box, or Daniel and Melanie, if you know, with regard to social media, are there CAPE standards?
We have not cross-referenced with that base of standards, so I will defer to the audience and how they share.
Okay. We'll see what comes in, if anything. And I also think, I was thinking about standards with regard to the many Common Core states and how much what you're doing is just a beautiful overlap to the Common Core. And I think one of the general messages I'm taking away from this webinar is that there's so much project-based learning and application to the Common Core regardless of discipline. And I'm hoping that the teacher educators on the call are finding that to be the case as well.
Jennifer, one thing I'd add to that is,
yeah.
and we had to make decisions and choices, and obviously we didn't make enough to what to cut out. But Magna talked a lot about the fact that that commonly used term of 21st century learning skills, those 21st century skills, of course, and how they connect to the Common Core, but that this use of social media and the global piece together, wow, talk about a real authentic application if you think about critical thinking, collaboration, communication, and creativity. I mean, social media is like built for those 4 C's to be delivered in a 21st century environment. So that's something that I would bring out.
I agree. I agree. We have a question from Kathy Blitzer in Indiana about Google online communities, a practice, and I'm just wondering if you guys are using the Google Circles at all or anything like that, if you have any experiences, and if you're not using it, if there's a specific reason why.
Oh, go ahead, Daniel.
I am not. Melanie, we both have. Great. I'll let Caitlin have. I can tell you that Melanie and I both have Google Plus account. We tend to collect accounts, I think, just to kind of check things out because we're curious creatures. But once again, it kind of goes back to where the students are. And I push them a little bit to move into Twitter because of the professional connections. But I don't have a lot of students or even partners in Google Plus right now. So I haven't maximized that resource yet. Caitlin?
There are a couple of different folks who I know who I do Google Hangout, though I find it tends to jam up the Wi-Fi if there are a lot of people joining. And so sometimes it's good for, so sometimes we prefer Skype instead. One thing I do know is that because Google collects so much data and you have to, once you sign up for one, Google for one service, a lot of people tend to shy away from it because you sign in on Google and then it connects to everything. But now it's also with YouTube. But I do, in terms of Google Plus, I haven't used it very much other than just, like Daniel said, to explore it. But I do know that all the data collection does tend to make people shy away from it. I saw a question Robert had asked a question about the concerns on the social platform negatively interacting in a public conversation. And he referenced trolls, and I'm not familiar with that terminology. So, Robert, if you could tweet, unless one of you out there know what a troll is, but
Caitlin, a troll is a negative person. A troll is someone who just spits venom, comes out from underneath the bridge, if you will, and lob hand grenades at you and cause problems. At this point in the game, I've just been so desperate to engage anybody just to talk to us and make sure there's a communication back and forth. I haven't had any problem with trolls on any of our social media work.
I haven't either, and I tweet on behalf of Global Teacher Education, and I also tweet personally. However, I'm not a very prominent public figure, and so I haven't had that problem. I do know that it can be an issue, especially when you think in a K-12 setting or even in higher education. The cyberbullying issue gets to be a huge problem, and if you're requiring students, though Melanie did make the comment on Twitter about optional, making it an option. But if you're requiring students to do it and then they're being, that they're subject to trolls or these cyber bullies, it does present a challenge. Like, and then also, teaching them responsible use policies. It can be quite challenging. So that's a good question. I haven't encountered that problem. I've been really lucky so far.
Caitlin, can I share one thing? I did a quick professional development work for the American Association of Agricultural Educators, and I was sharing with them about social media some, and I asked my students, which is always fun and dangerous, right? When you just throw out open-ended stuff and see what comes back. I love doing that. I said, as a learner, do you enjoy social media attached to your collegiate courses and programs? And I got a lot of good stuff, but unfortunately, like a lot of teachers, what do I zero in and focus on? That one or two negative comments. And I had a negative comment that really kind of, I guess, broke my heart, because it was one student, but one out of, so I need to keep perspective. Sometimes I have a hard time with that. But one student who I just need to continue to coach because they haven't got it yet. And the comment was, I believe that social media is to be used for social purposes, not for school. And I'm afraid that student doesn't understand maybe the difference in adjective there. Facebook may be appropriately restricted as a personal social media. However, Twitter blurs the line between personal and professional, and LinkedIn is professional social media. But this is the key. Social does not mean personal. Work interactions, what we're doing right now, are social. Personal interactions are social. I'm afraid they didn't get what the words mean, that they think social media means personal life. I don't think that's the case anymore. Social media, social does not equal personal. And so that's something that as teacher educators, we have to think about how we can coach up this next generation of digital citizens who will have a digital fingerprint that we're responsible for them cultivating.
And the same can be said for teacher educators. And Daniel, I think you're a marvelous leader on that front. And I'm going to let your comment about social and personal be the last one. But I would also encourage everyone to continue to use the hashtag that we've been using if you're on Twitter. And thanks to all of you who have been using the comments. We got lots more comments. And I'm hoping that this will lead to perhaps some blog posts and some additional resources in the future. And maybe this is just the tip of the iceberg of the social media conversation for teacher educators. And I'd welcome feedback from everyone who participated with regard to the value and the usefulness. And I just want to thank Caitlin for organizing, and to Daniel and Melanie for doing such marvelous presentations, Caitlin as well. And also final thanks to the Asia Society for sponsoring us and hosting us on the webinar platform that they use. So from Longview, I just want to say thanks to everyone. And Caitlin, I'm going to let you have the final word.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. The only final word I will say is to check the URL that we featured on this slide. We'll have a recording of today's webinar and some discussion questions. And please continue the conversation on Twitter using the hashtag. Thank you very much, Jennifer, Daniel, and Melanie. Everyone enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you for joining us.